Hey guys, Technomentary with the video for you guys. In today's video, we're going to be reviewing the iPhone SE 2020 edition or the second edition with the iPhone 6s Plus in a full comparison between these devices. We're going to take a look at the hardware, the software, and the overall performance on iOS 14 on both of these devices. What can you expect? And the question I'm trying to answer here is it worth upgrading from one to another, or should you buy either of these phones in 2021? We're going to break all that down for you guys. But before we go ahead and get started, if you guys are new to our channel, we do a lot of tech news, reviews, and giveaways. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, if you guys are looking for a discounted iPhone, some of the newer iPhones at a discounted price, make sure you guys check out the link in the description section. So let's go ahead and get started with today's video. First thing first is the release date of both of these phones. The iPhone Plus here was released in September 2015, and it's been well over 5.5 years, coming to 6 years, and it's on iOS 14 running right now. Whereas the iPhone SE 2020 edition came out in April of 2020. It wasn't quite the annual release time, so it's kind of a little bit shocking from Apple to release this device that is really small compared to the iPhone 10 lineup. It came after the 10 lineup, and it's kind of surprised everyone with the semi-annual release of the iPhone SE. If you remember, in 2016, Apple has released a SE as well. That was the first generation of SE, but this is the second generation of the SE. It has a very similar build, look, and hardware specs, similar to the iPhone 8 here. So a lot of folks are getting confused between the 8 and the SE 2020 edition because of how much of the similarities there is. A lot of folks have also mentioned that it almost looks like Apple reused the part from the 8 to build the SE second edition of it. But furthermore, let's talk about these two phones. First thing first is we want to take a look at the body size differences. As you see, the Plus just looks very huge in terms of just body size, because SE here is the smaller edition of it. A good comparison would probably be the 6S and this one, because there is no Plus version of the SE second edition, although there is some rumor that Apple might release a Plus side of the second edition of SE that might be very similar to the iPhone 6s Plus. So that comparison video, if it comes out, will definitely make it. The other thing you notice between these body builds, albeit besides that huge difference in body size, is the iPhone SE has both front and back, both are glass. Because of this glass back, you're able to do wireless charging. Whereas on the Plus size here one, it's aluminum back, so there's going to be no wireless charging, unfortunately, on the iPhone Plus that we have. Besides that, you also notice both of these phones feature single 12 megapixel camera. Of course, in terms of cosmetic differences, the Apple logo is more centered on the iPhone SE, where on the Plus it's more above here. Other things you'll notice here, the print here, iPhone, is completely gone on it. Of course, this is a special edition of product red, which the iPhone 6s Plus doesn't have any of that special product red edition, because that was a recent feature to it. Talking about color here, both of these phones have different set of colors. So the iPhone SE comes in your black, your silver, and the product red, as you see we're gonna have our hand, where the 6s Plus is almost what Apple usually has, the base color. You have your silver, your space gray, your gold, and then there's a special color which is the rose gold, which Apple introduced for the very first time. And let's take a look at just the overall body. As you'll notice here, the iPhone 6s features that 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, which is gone on the iPhone SE. Almost something that you'll notice between these two devices right off the bat. Of course, the SE also has a set of more speakers compared to the Plus size. That's another noticeable difference. Aside that, you probably won't notice much difference of the build. They're similar in terms of having that rounded bezel here, really just matte size bezel here that we have between these two phones. And if we start comparing, the next set of things on these two phones is the storage capacity you get on both of these devices are slightly different in terms of how much they come with, and that's where the price point also begin. The iPhone SE, when it was released in 2015, or the iPhone Plus, which was released in 2015, at 16 gig, you paid almost $749 compared to the iPhone SE, the second edition, which you are paying at 64 gig, you're paying $399, half the price that you pay for at the original price. And that's one big thing Apple has done when they released it, was that shocking price point of $399, because with the iPhone 10 lineup, Apple's pricing went up to $999 for the base model of any phone. So it almost seems Apple wanted to capture that market for the lower end smartphone market. And one thing Apple has kind of went and stated on the iPhone SE at the time it was released is that they released the A13 Bionic chip, which Apple claimed to be the fastest chip on any smartphone. So that's the claim Apple came up with. And the light feature of the phone is probably, that's one thing you'll notice on the iPhone Plus. Here it has A9 chip, so almost 4 generation difference between of the chips, and that's where we'll probably notice that feature in the actual build of these two phones, is the speed you get between these two devices. And let's talk about the other piece of these two phones, is the battery life. So what kind of battery life can you expect between these two phones? Well, a couple things here between these two phones is, of course, the iPhone Plus here has almost a 2750 mAh battery, and that allows you to do 14 hours of video playback, compared to the iPhone SE here, which sports 1800 mAh battery, similar to the iPhone 8 build. Not a lot going on because the iPhone 6s Plus does have a bigger body and a display. It consumes a lot more memory, a lot more of your battery faster, and that's because of the power that it needs to run, compared to the SE, which it has a smaller battery, but it gives you 13 hours of video playback. So you get almost an hour difference between these two phones in terms of battery. What does that really mean for a user? Well, this what really means is that if you're a light to maybe a little bit medium user, and both of the phones on a full charge should get you through the whole day. Maybe if you're medium to more on the higher end heavy user of the phones, both of the phones probably get you halfway through the day before you need another charge, because the battery life isn't that great, but it still gets the job done. And talking about hardware, one last thing we want to talk about between these two phones is the water resistivity between these phones. Unfortunately, the 6s Plus is not water resistant. The iPhone SE here, it is water resistant. You're able to take wood underwater for 1 meter for 30 minutes. So you'll notice that aspect of it. And let's talk about the camera between these two phones. We notice the camera is, both them have that 12 megapixel video camera. Of course, the camera looks big on the SE compared to the Plus, but what does that really mean? Well, a lot of improvement has happened because of that 5-year difference between these two phones. Although they might be both holding the same 12 megapixel camera, you get a lot between these two phones. The iPhone SE here has noticeable features such as optical optical zoom, actually not optical, it actually has what's known as portrait mode, which isn't available on the iPhone SE here, that iPhone Plus here that we have, and that's a noticeable difference between it. So that portrait mode that you're seeing here is not available, and that's one of the biggest seller point, is that improved camera that you have. It also has this next generation smart HDR for photos. That's another improvement Apple has done with the camera itself. And in the video recording part of both of these two phones is that there's differences there as well. Both of the phones can record from 720 HD all the way to 4K, but the iPhone SE has only one 4K setting, that is 30 frames per second. iPhone SE here can do both from 4K 24 frames per second to 30, and then all the way up to 60 frames per second. It also has what's known as extended dynamic range for up to 30 frames per second. Really just enhances it as well. And then the other thing is quick take. So if you take a video and want to take a picture, you simply slide it and you start to do pretty much a recording between just recording to enable the video recording of these two phones. And of course, let's talk about the software between these two phones. That's a big part about these two phones, is the software build of it. What kind of software build can you expect between these two phones? Well, a couple things here. Both of these phones are on iOS 14. So they're running on iOS 14. We saw that they have, both of them have big icons. You have their app library. All of that stuff are found on both of these two phones. But there's unfortunately a bad news for the iPhone 6s Plus, is that unfortunately we are not going to be probably seeing iOS 15 on the Plus here that we have, because it's at its end of life and Apple will stop the update. We were kind of iffy if it was even going to get iOS 14. Unfortunately, it did get iOS 14. The 6 Plus, which is different from the 6s Plus, did not get iOS 13 update or 14 update. Stopped at iOS 12, and a lot of apps we're starting to notice just slowed down or not supported anymore on that 6 Plus, unlike the 6s, because it's able to run iOS 14. It has the hardware for it. All the apps are still running. All the apps from gaming or social media to just entertainment, all of that, your utilities, gaming as well, all of those popular apps are possible on both of these two phones. One thing we'll notice on gaming wise is that if you're playing games that are heavy graphic like PUBG and Call of Duty, games that are meant to play on a console, the iPhone SE here does a phenomenal job thanks to that A13 Bionic chip. That improved chip and the hardware allows it to do such heavy graphic gaming, unlike the 6s here, which you can probably play most of the less heavy graphic games that are smaller and less heavy on using the phone's hardware as much. And to break it down for you guys, so what can you expect if you're upgrading from the iPhone 6s Plus to the SE? Of course, you're going to be going from a big screen to a little screen, no doubt there. But how much big, how much small, as you can see here, that's the difference between these two phones, is the display. Aside that, everything that you get on the iPhone 6s Plus is pretty much upgraded on the SE. Besides the display, you have an improved camera here, that you have better hardware, better display, we would say in some aspect, because of True Tone like that. We don't see it on the SE. But all of that aside, if you're willing to trade off the size and between the display here, the iPhone SE, we would say, the better pick, better for your money as well, because it's starting at a new, you're able to get it for $399, probably even cheaper if you buy it pre-owned, compared to the SE, which if you're really tight on budget, it might be the only reason you get the 6s Plus, because it's at end of his life in software update, but still for basic needs for calling and texting, all of that stuff will be supported at least another couple of years, because even though iOS updates start, doesn't necessarily mean you can't really use the phone. You can still use the phone, but things are going to slow down, and know that it would be time for an upgrade. Whereas the SE 2020 edition here, you're gonna have this phone for at least another 4 years, no doubt. 4 more updates to come and a lot more life out of it. And it's a little smaller phone, but it is power. So it's a power packed phone that pretty much does what one of the newer iPhone 12 lineup does there. So no doubt in that area. So hopefully this video was helpful. We want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think between the SE and the 6s Plus? If you upgraded from either phone or using either of the phones, what has your experience like? Leave a comment in the comment section. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys next time.